All in favor? And a motion for approval of the minutes from February 12th, 2024, and the special meeting on February 27th, 2024. Okay. All in favor? Great. And Cindy, has anyone signed up to speak at today's meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Pamela Ovens. Ms. Ovens?
Usually the one in front of me, give it a try.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm Pamela Martin Ovens. I live on the south end of our island. My one comment is I hope the extremely expensive consultant answered Councilwoman Bryson's questions. And thank you, Brian McElwee, for getting rid of rodenticide use on town property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else?
Carl Braden.
Morning.
My name is Carl Braden and from Bradley Beach, Bradley Circle area, homeowner since '97. I've been using a pedestrian access gate between Bradley Circle and Dreesen Beach Park nearly every day, often multiple times a day for decades, walking and riding between these two neighborhoods. I've enjoyed walking with my dog in the lovely shaded park when it's too hot at the beach or when dogs are restricted at the beach. My daughter enjoyed the playground, and we always liked to take our bikes to the beach using the safe and well-maintained beach access boardwalk. So for 10 months, I've sent emails explaining the multiple reasons that residents and guests would regularly visit the park, but my emails are unanswered. I've held off from speaking publicly, hoping the town would correct this mistake during the park renovations. Nevertheless, a memo by the public safety director last May was used to justify closing the access. I recently obtained a copy via FOIA request, and the memo claims, quote, "There appear to be no legitimate purpose for the park access." So, as suspected, the memo indicated that our local neighbor and councilperson, Mrs. Becker, had met with Director Bromage and one other neighbor, a part-time resident who built a home right next to the park access, knowing full well that the access was there for decades before she arrived. That meeting is what facilitated the memo. Councilperson Becker never responded to my original email, so when I encountered her last week at Town Hall, she told me it's a public safety issue and there's nothing to discuss. This doesn't sound unbiased representative to me. I spoke with Director Bromage the day that my morning dog walk was blocked by the gate being hastily boarded up. He indicated he was not aware of there being a written legal access easement. The easement written by town attorneys in 2002 made certain that the access continued to remain open for the use and benefit of the general public. I provided the plats and legal documents to the town management. Whether intentional or not, the May 2023 memo contains incorrect and misleading statements. First, it refers to Bradley Circle as a private community. Bradley Circle is no different than Bradley Beach Road, which serves as the entrance to the park. Both streets are public roads. Each street is a mix of primary homes and second homes, many short-term rentals. Any person can enter either street legally, day or night. There are no gates. On Hilton Head, we have many private communities. Bradley Circle is not one. Incidentally, after purchasing the Burke's land in 2002, Marriott actually offered to make Bradley Circle into a private community, gated community. But some owners rejected the offer, so it remains publicly accessible, like Bradley Beach Road, Burke's Beach Road, and Singleton, which all have park access.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. We appreciate your comments. And the next item on our agenda is the presentation of the Fire and Rescue Annual Report. And Chief Blankenship, thank you for joining us this morning, all of y'all. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Good morning. First, I'd like to start off by saying I'd like to thank my staff for putting this together and putting our annual report together. Town Chief Christopher Osman, Deputy Chief Johanna Pfister, and Chief Cunningham are very instrumental in this. It's very much a team effort, and they do get all the credit. So I'm here to present our 2023 Fire Rescue Annual Report. Another busy year last year. We had a total of 9,560 calls, which was just about 80 short of the year before. So we continue to see our calls increasing year after year. 26 average incidents a day with our top 3 busiest days. As you can see there below, 55, 53, and 49 incidents. 20-year increase is still trending to about 60% over the last 20 years. That's call volume. As you can see, the top is the total calls, the blue is EMS, and the red is fire. So obviously our EMS calls are what continues to go up every year. Busiest day is always Saturdays, and busiest month is July, probably to no one's surprise. Engine 5 and Medic 5 continue to be our busiest crews, and they are located at the front gate of Hilton Head Plantation, servicing about half of Hilton Head Plantation, and a lot of that call volume is from the retirement homes and stuff on Main Street. Over the last 3 years, we've seen an increase of 10% over those 3 years. Into our structure fires, we had 39 fires within a structure, and of those 39, 20 were confined to the object of origin, 9 to the room, 1 to the floor, and 9 to the building. So 74% of those were confined to the object or room of origin, which basically is very good. It means we're getting the fire out before it can spread. Go over to property saved. We like to report on, a lot of times people report on the property loss, which were just over $2 million last year, but we like to focus on the positive and say that we saved $152 million worth of property. In those fires by property type, you can see single family went up last year from 17 to 22. We're down in multifamily, little up in commercial. Our wildfire, brush fire, grass fires went down, and across the board we were down in vehicles, trash fires, and other. So pretty good year from 23 compared to 22. Our yard waste burning statistics, as you guys know, 2 Saturdays a month we do open yard waste burning on Hilton Head. And we have 354 permits that were registered on the approved days, and we were able to go out and do compliance checks on all 354 of those. We issued 11 warnings and only 3 citations. Frequent responses, this is the 5 addresses that we go to most, and these will all be really based on medical calls. You'll see 300 Woodhaven, which is the Seabrook, 421 Squire Pope Road, which is Bayshore, 110 Gardner Drive, Lemongrass, Lamont. So mostly elderly care facilities and assisted and non-assisted residences. You'll have a report. I left a data report too. We'll highlight a couple of things in there, but feel free to look through that annual data report. I'm not going to go through all of that here tonight. So in our operations, we look at our benchmark times. These are for fire calls, and we're just shy of hitting our benchmark in alarm handling, turnout, and our travel time. However, our total response time, we are meeting that. So it means we're getting apparatus on scene within our benchmark of 8 minutes and 50 seconds, 90% of the time. So that is, we look at this as part of our accreditation model, and this shows us things of areas that we can improve on. So we can improve in call handling, we can improve on our turnout time. Travel time, there's not a lot we can do with that. That's traffic. That departments would look at that and say, where could I put the next station, where it build out? So travel times aren't really gonna change too much. Again, in EMS, we're short here overall by 1 minute and 6. This is a big thing is because of the way we're handling EMS calls now. We are not running lights and sirens out the door fast to all medical calls. We started last year we're getting a lot more information in our dispatch center, and we're prioritizing those calls. And I would say a vast majority of our EMS calls we now run are non-emergent. That's just a risk factor that we've looked at over the years, and it's actually been very beneficial in slowing us down and to those non-emergent calls that aren't life-threatening emergencies. Our stations, shipyard, for fire incidents, shipyard station, Station 1 is the busiest, followed by the rest, 5, 7, 6, 3, 4, and 2. And then for medical calls, again, it's Station 5 at the front gate of Hilton Head Plantation, followed by Station 1 and Shipyard, and the remainder of them. Little demographic on who we serve EMS-wise. We've got this broken down to age. As you can see, the vast majority of our patients are 65 and older. And we do not discriminate against male and female. We run them about equally, so 49, 51%. We like to look at where our patients are coming from. So this graph shows all the states and how many patients in those states. As you can see, of all of our calls, the vast majority of them are from our home state here in South Carolina, 3,776. And a little bit later, we'll see that actually the breakdown of most of them actually being our residents here on Hilton Head Island. Cardiac survival rate this year was 50%, which is awesome. We actually in 2024 are already trending the same way. We're currently sitting at 50%. The national average has risen from about 10 to 26, so I think across the nation we're doing a better job. We continue since 2012 to surpass the national average. This just means 7 people that were in witnessed shockable cardiac arrest survived and walked out of the hospital last year, which is an amazing statistic. And here in the center, this is one of the gentlemen that we actually saved. We always like to go back and meet with them and allow them to meet their rescuers. Our interfacility transports went down this last year. We were working very hard with Tenant to really get these down to 0 is what I'd really like to do. But this last year they did help us out. They got a contract with a local private carrier and our calls really went down. We will continue that relationship with Navant now that they're in and hopefully get these down even lower. So from 25 to 15 for interfacilities, that has been as high as in the 70s before. So this is really an effort that we've been working with them year after year. And then the interfacility transports from the hospital to airport. So Hilton Head Hospital does not have a landing pad at the hospital. So every time they have to fly a patient out, we go to the airport, we pick up the flight crew, we take them to the hospital to get the patient, and then we bring them back to the airport. So that stays about 25 each year that we do that. And down the road, if we can get more private carriers in here, that is something we would look at the private carriers doing as well.
Have there been any statistics tracked on that in terms of outcomes?
No, so they're not technically our patients. So in all of those, we really aren't in the know with that which is why we don't just go to the hospital, pick up the patient and take them to the hospital or to the airport. We actually pick up the flight crew, so it is always their patient. So I do not have statistics for that. Patients receiving naloxone, Narcan. So we saw this spike go up during the pandemic as we did nationwide, and we're starting to see it trending back to normal here on Hilton Head. We only gave 43 patients Narcan last year, which is not a lot, and I can tell you that number doesn't represent an overdose. So if we have a cardiac arrest with unknown ideation, we don't know what's going on, Narcan is one of the drugs we give to see if it will correct the cardiac arrest. So I'm not saying 43 people overdosed, I'm just saying we gave that drug. We are partnered with a county program that every time we do have a known overdose, we contact the county and let them know, and within 72 hours, they are making contact with those patients. That's been a very beneficial program to us. They're funded through some money through the CARES Act and some continuing money through the county, and we see far less overdoses on Hilton Head than they do in the rest of the county. So I think that partnership is really last. I do know they made contact a couple weeks ago. They're looking to come back on Hilton Head and do a Narcan and CPR training and to hand out Narcan. So we are working with them to provide a facility for that to happen. So that will be coming soon. EMS billing, our EMS net revenue collected last year was $2.3 million. That was 6,219 total patients, and of those, 3,294 have Hilton Head billing addresses. So about half the patients we see live here on the island. Our revenue collection rate is standing at 83.5 versus the national average of 70, so that is always a very good thing. Into some of our training, 36,373 total training hours for our staff last year. And of that, 26,000 of it was at the company level, which means they're interacting crews together, not just individuals. You can see the different categories we break down is PT, rescue, hazmat, EMS, fire training, and then when you break it down even more, it's company officer, driver, in-station training. Hilton Head has two special rescue teams. Our technical rescue team, which if any of you were at the parade yesterday, you may have seen our new trailer. Actually, I think that's in the next slide, so I'll wait for that. But some notable accomplishments for the team this year, we did put in service a double stack boat trailer, a command logistics trailer that we're going to look at. We purchased some radios and satellite internet connections, and we conducted our EMAP accreditation site visit. So we're looking in April to receive EMAP accreditation for our technical rescue team. If that comes to fruition, we'll be the only one in the state, and we'll be the only Type 4 team in the nation to have this. So fingers crossed on that. And some things of notery that we did in 2023 is we completed a readiness exercise in Charleston. Every year, both teams are required to do a state-level readiness exercise in order to get the grant funding that funds these teams. We did take the team to the Guardian Center to do a flood exercise in Perry, Georgia. We did deploy for Tropical Storm Idalia, and we had a apartment collapse in Jasper County that we assisted them with mutual aid with some shoring. This is the trailer we had in the parade yesterday. This is our new command and logistics trailer. The state of South Carolina gave every team $1 million last year of funding to basically supplement our Homeland Security grants. So the Homeland Security grants don't allow us to purchase some things, such as prime movers, they call them. So they give us all this stuff, but nothing to transport the stuff with. So state of South Carolina stepped up last year, gave every team $1 million to basically say, all right, now go buy something to get this stuff where you got to go. So this is what we bought. One of the things. This is this trailer coupled with a Chevy 5500 flatbed truck can get all of our equipment, our ATVs, our Western shelters, all of that stuff on deployments. We can load this up. When we get there, we can unload it, and then this becomes our center of operation command post. Our other teams, our hazmat team. This last year, they did some specialty training and DHEC lab training on evidence collection in Department of Defense Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Characterization and Mitigation course. We did the HAZSIM monitoring training device acquired, and we updated our technology for all of our air monitors that we actually use every day on our trucks as well. Into our community risk reduction, formerly our Bureau of Fire Prevention, we have transitioned that to Community Risk Reduction Division. They completed 2,700 fire inspections with 2,300, just over 2,300 violations found to date. 2,210 of those violations have been corrected. We did 697 new construction inspections, which, as we know, in Hilton Head, and we're kind of booming now for us, that's a lot. 470 plan reviews, 14 fire investigations. The guys out on the line, the crews on the line, inspect all of our hydrants annually. So we did 2,991 hydrant inspections. We installed 121 smoke alarms. We did 83 fire in the streets and after the fire home visits. So as you know, we go out proactively and do our fire in the streets program. And then after a fire, we go back and revisit those homes in that area where the fire was and do home safety inspections, install smoke detectors if needed.
I just want to highlight for you that I believe, if I recall the information, there was at least one incident where the family, the folks living there, were saved, were protected because of the fire alarm that y'all put into place in your programming. So really good work. Anyone who's listening or come back to watch this meeting, I'm going to speak for you, but please give y'all a call to help them out so that we can save those lives.
Yes,
Not we, but y'all.
It's been an awesome program. We mark all of our smoke detectors, so we know if we install them. Every time we have a fire, we check those detectors to make sure they were functioning. If we installed them, and through the programming, we can know if a fire happens in a house that we had installed them. So it's really a circular, feel good moment to know that they got out because we installed the smoke detectors.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for everything, but thank you for that.
Madam Chair, can I ask one question about that? The town has a program for helping folks with water and sewer installations. Is our smoke detector program also tied to that? Seems like areas where that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, we actually have, it's a smoke detector program year round. So aside from our fire in the streets, if someone calls and says, I need a smoke detector, we actually go out yearly or all the time and help install them. A lot of times, even the batteries they can't reach, we'll go out and help them change their batteries or install smoke detectors. So that's a year-round program
Yeah,
that we offer all the time.
I'm just wondering if, through community development, we have a program to reach out to folks who need sewer connections or water connections, and those might be the same type of folks that need a smoke alarm as well. I didn't know whether there was some sort of cooperation between the departments about that.
I don't know. I can look into that and see if that is. I would venture to guess there is.
Here we go.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that is part of, what they ask and.
Great.
To uphold and that
Commissioners?
So, like, we have a couple avenues that we
Right.
know about.
Great, thank you.
And as we get in, we're going to start with some of our, hopefully in the future, community paramedicine programs, and we'll also incorporate all of this into that. If we're entering someone's home to help them on a medical side, we can still do the same thing and perform, smoke detector checks and fire safety checks. So basically, anytime we have the opportunity to get in someone's home, that is what we're focusing on. We did 31 risk watch child injury prevention classes in the like the daycares and early education centers. We had 826 CPR AED students. So this is another big number for us. I think we broke a record this year. That's our public CPR classes that we instruct. And I know we had a really feel-good moment the other day. We had a gentleman in cardiac arrest. We got there, his son had performed CPR on him. And then come to find out, his son had taken one of our classes. So on his own accord, he asked if he could come speak to the next class. So we had a CPR class the next week, and he actually came in. He's an 18-year-old kid and talked to the CPR class to tell them how impactful it is and that, you could use this one day. So pretty cool.
And just as an added note, many of town council and staff had gone and taken that course, and it's not the course you remember from a decade ago or two. It's easy, it's quick, and everyone should be able to take it and administer that help until y'all get there. So I encourage everyone to give a call and try to get into one of those classes.
Yep. And you can go to the town's website under fire rescue and you can register for those classes. And we did 71 car seat installs. Our community outreach and recruitment. So this is a new division that we started in July, thanks to the budget approval last year. We were able to get some new positions in fire rescue. This was one of them. It's made a huge impact already on our community. We've done 5 new programs to build awareness of fire rescue's programs and services, and we formed 11 new partnerships to enhance events and programs throughout the community. Our big one that we like to highlight is the Red Hot Readers with the Hilton Head Elementary School for the Creative Arts. It's where our firefighters and employees go into the school and read to the kids on Fridays. So it's been an awesome program. We're gonna expand that to some other schools. But Captain Jenkins and Captain Ferguson have really taken all of this and ran with it. And the amount of things that they've accomplished in that first 6 months of doing it has been awesome. They completed 4 community presentations demonstrating fire rescue's impact within our community. And we're at 19 community events attended or hosted, inviting the community to participate in these new programs. So the outreach has been awesome. We're really getting people, the community, to understand what it is that we do. We don't just run fire calls and medical calls, but we're so much more than that. And the relationships that they're forming with kids in schools, like the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, and we have a program at NOC, has been awesome. Boys and Girls Club, we have a program now. So they're doing a little recruiting along the way too. So we're looking for kids that want to stay here at home and become firefighters or dispatchers. Another new division is our communications and marketing. So forever we had kind of used the town's people, but we've become so much more than that. Our outreach really needs to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Captured. So we brought on Kenzie. She was a dispatcher of ours, transferred her over to our communications and marketing. And I mean, just our Facebook alone, our reach was 750,000 people last year. She started a new Instagram page and just is really taking it to the next level to get all of our information out there and for people to see what we do. So I think it's awesome. I love our Facebook page. I think she does a great job. He's very busy. Emergency management, busy year. They coordinated the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Heritage, a recovery tabletop exercise. We had Tropical Storm Idalia. Had a wind event in May that brought down some trees, Barnwell communications exercise, and the flooding we had in December. But the big thing for emergency management this year is Tom did get the town's emergency management program accredited through EMAP, which is awesome. I think we're one of the smaller emergency management divisions in the nation that has received this accreditation. So this was Fire Rescue's second one, and like I told you, hopefully in April, we'll have a third.
Congratulations. That's a
Thank
big
you.
deal. Thank you.
Our 911 communications center, our dispatch center, took in 75,000 incoming calls. Their busy time is 3 to 4 in the afternoon. And they're transferring of those 75,000, just over 12,000 of them for law enforcement matters to Beaufort County Sheriff's Office. We got the APCO Agency Training Program certification this year, and Brian Lemus, one of our supervisors, was awarded the 2023 Nino APCO Palmetto Award for Professionalism. So it's awesome. We recognized him at our awards banquet a couple weeks ago. Fleet maintenance. Fleet maintenance takes care of all of the town's fleet and equipment. So if you can look at these graphs, you'll see they stay busy with unscheduled repairs of vehicles and equipment that come in. Staffing update. So this has changed a little bit, but this last year, like I said, with the passing of the budget, we were able to get some positions. Christopher came on as the Battalion Chief of Strategic Planning, BJ and Lee as the Captains of Community Outreach and Recruitment, and Kenzie as the Digital Marketing and Communication Specialist. We hired the following new positions: Emergency Management Coordinator, which is a part-time person to help Tom Dunn in emergency management, a 4th Fire Inspector, and a 3rd Mechanic. Our current staffing levels, operations, says fully staffed. We're technically, I think, 3 short right now that Chief Cunningham's getting ready to hire for. We got a member on military leave, and the EMS lieutenant. It says here the interviews have been completed, but we have just awarded that to one of our line firefighters. Will be coming up as our EMS lieutenant. And we have one community risk reduction fire inspector that is currently available right now. Some follow-ups on the challenges that we brought to you during the mid-year. Engine 1, as we all know, last 4th of July was involved in a collision on Pope Avenue. It is currently in Sumter, South Carolina, getting repaired. They have promised us we will have it back by the end of the month, so that is huge. The AC units for the ambulances, we reported that we couldn't get them, no one could get them. We finally got them, the supply chain caught up, so we have all that we need, and we have some available in reserve coming into the summer months. And the delays in the new apparatus continue. We should, in the next couple months, start seeing the pumpers roll in. Those will come in 3 phases over the next 3 months, and then the aerials, the 2 ladder quints, are pushed out to October. So, and I can say that this is not just our vendor, this is every vendor across fire apparatus manufacturers. I meet with the South Carolina Metro Chiefs, and we all have different trucks, and everyone complains about the same thing. So this isn't manufacturer specific. Our current, if you were to order a truck today, it would take 3 years to get here. If you ordered a tiller or a bigger ladder, it would take almost 4 years to get here. Some accomplishments we had last year as part of the USAR grant. We were able to get a 15-passenger van, the Chevy 5500 truck, 3 inflatable boats, the double-stack boat trailer, all placed in service for our USAR team. And that was all coming from state-funded money. The 2024 to 2026 strategic plan was formally adopted by you all in November. The E911 Communications Center received the APCO training program certification, making our dispatch center one of 92 agencies and one of 3 in South Carolina with that designation. Fire Rescue was awarded the Fire Safe South Carolina designation for the 4th year since its inception. And I talked to you about the EMAP accreditation already. We launched our Fire Rescue Instagram page. Another big one here, a big win for us, is we implemented our Fire Rescue Chaplaincy Program. So we have Pastor June from Christ Lutheran Church, Louis Johnson from Oak Grove Missionary Baptist Church, Rabbi Bloom from Beth Yam, and Bill McCutcheon from Hilton Head Presbyterian have all agreed to come on and are now the 4 members of our Fire Rescue Chaplaincy. We received a grant from the Assistance Firefighter Grant, which is a federal grant to send 10 paramedics to paramedic school. We purchased a Realty 360 simulator monitors and mannequins. This enhances our ability to train in simulation style scenarios. And we updated our EMS protocol and emergency operations plan. Some CIP projects that we completed, all the primary fire hose on the fire trucks is in, and we will be placing that in service when the new pumpers get here. We were able to put a new heavy vehicle lift and tire changer into our fleet maintenance program, so now we can actually do the maintenance and everything on those tires in-house instead of outsourcing them. And the vehicles placed in service this year, we did eight town vehicles and 3 UTVs, and Fire Rescue did 2 staff vehicles, 1 USAR vehicle and 1 forklift. And those are all either new or replenished for 12 years, 120,000 miles. What's next? Some upcoming initiatives. With the LMO changes, we'll have an addressing ordinance in place. We have some upgrades to our training center that will be happening over the next couple of years. Arrival of the new apparatus fleet, installation of our new computer-aided dispatch center, which is our CAD, which basically is the brain in the dispatch center that you type in the information in the emergency and it spits out what you're supposed to send. So this is going to be huge for us. It's currently getting replaced right now. And then a county-wide project is the installation of new station alerting to all fire stations. This will be all fire stations in the county, and we're the only ones that currently had it. Ours was end of life. We were getting ready to replace it anyway. But the county stepped up with some CARES money and put it as a county-wide initiative. So that is recently signed, sealed, delivered, and we're meeting, I think, next week to set the schedule for getting that in. That's it. Thank you guys for your continued support, and any questions?
Steve, questions, comments?
No questions, but I do want to congratulate you on an outstanding report in terms of detail.
Thank you.
Alex?
One, Chief, thank you. You continue to make us proud. Just a couple things that I wanted to ask you about. One, you sort of cleaned up the response time because the dispatch is now sort of understanding the nature of the call. So that means we may not be going as fast to the calls, right? I'm just, however, curious to know if that trend sort of continues. Would you see need for us expanding the service at all to make sure that the more urgent calls can be dealt with accordingly?
Yeah, I think our next expansion you'll see is in EMS. I think our community paramedicine program that is part of our strategic plan will be instrumental in this. I think it'll take a lot of those non-emergent calls to where we're not sending ambulances, we're sending people, maybe in a vehicle because they really don't need to go to the hospital. They might need to talk to someone, or they might need to know something about their medication. So this will be a partnership, I think. I envision it with VIM and the hospital and everything to go out and basically care for them in their home rather than sending an ambulance to do that and tying up ambulances. So I think as that kicks off and spins off, our trucks will stay available more. I know the next staffing need that will come is, as we did 2 years ago, we took Station 4 from a cross-staff crew, which had 3 people. And if a medical call came in, they all got on the ambulance and put the engine out of service, or vice versa, to more the split crew model where there's always 2 and 2. So we still have 3 stations left to get to that staffing model. So I think that is the next challenge in our staffing, but that's adding people. And you're looking at probably 12, which probably 15 people just to make that happen. But as our call volume goes up, that's really going to be the indicator of us busy. We're running out of units more frequently than we ever have. And we've already internally kind of peeled back the layers of our response to where we aren't sending ambulances emergent, or we're not sending a fire truck to automatically back them up. So before, we would send engine and a medic to, a given kind of call. Now with that questioning, we're kind of peeling down the layers to find out what their real emergency is and sending the appropriate unit. So our unit responses are down overall, but we're finding that we're running out of units more quickly. So I love data. I have Christopher. He's a data genius. So all of that will come out in data, and that is what I will use to determine where we go from here.
Keep us abreast. Be willing to support. The second, as I looked through the amount of hours when it came to the mechanic field, seems like the couple guys that you have pretty busy there right now. So you hired someone else, and now some upgrades in the facility as well. Are there additional upgrades that we may need to make sure we're keeping up with being able to keep our apparatus functionable?
I think that honestly, our fleet is overdue. So our fleet replacement was actually scheduled right at the tail end of Hurricane Matthew. So we have pushed 4 years past that, and we're seeing it. And where we're seeing it is in the maintenance of it. Those take a lot of time away from those guys doing other things. So a new fleet is going to be huge. And I will tell you, I'm coming to budget this year with the replacement of our tiller trucks. Our tiller trucks are old. They're refurbs. So they're actually like 1991 trucks that were just kind of refurbed to make them look good. We've been running them a long time. They're expensive to fix, and they break all the time. So I'm coming to replace those, and I'm not going to go to tillers. We're going to go to straight stick trucks like our Quints. When this all happens, there will be some downtime for those guys. Like, the stuff won't break when it's new, but it's just, as things get older, things break, which is, we have a very good program. And this year, Mark was able to, him and I kind of got together, and I said, we need someone in charge. We need a fleet manager for the whole town. And now, so Keith Tyson, our fleet manager, has now taken on that responsibility for the whole town. So he manages replacement, purchase, everything, rotation. We're rotating vehicles. So they might before where they would hit their time, they might be 12 years old, but they only had 50,000 miles on them. They still need to be replaced because of their age and how wore out they are, but now we're going to rotate vehicles through the town to try to extend their life, basically. So it's something we're always looking at.
All right.
But listen, with your guys' support, especially through budgeting, is what makes all of this happen. I know fire trucks are very expensive, but I will tell you, we're not buying the most expensive one. We are frugal when it comes to that, and we do our due diligence, but if it says fire on it, it's expensive.
Betsy?
Yes, first of all, thank you. I agree with Mr. Alfred. Very thorough report, always well done. You guys do a great job, not just out in the field, but in your reporting, so I appreciate that. And you anticipated a couple of my questions. One was, how did your new hiring work? And you covered that in your report. Thank you for that. And then the other was, what about your capital expenditures and the delay in getting equipment? And you covered that as well. So, it's like, okay, I don't have any more questions. But I appreciate Mr. Brown asking about the maintenance and also equipment, because we need to, since the equipment is delayed in getting here for fire departments across the country, we need to stay ahead of that curve. And so we'll take a good look at what you're asking for this year in capital. So.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yes, the report is wonderful and easy to read and provides a tremendous amount of information to the entire community. We know you do a good job. I worry about y'all all the time. You're in my prayers. And thank you for everything that you do. I have one question. There's an increase and substantial increase in the single family responses. Have we tracked that at all to see whether or not those are rental units, permitted rental units, or anything
We,
along those
we
lines?
do track it. I think we track more I mean, yes, we would know if they're a rental. I think for us, the big thing is tracking how these are starting. So what we saw last year, or not in 2023, in 2022, was cooking fires was our highest. I think once we look at the data this year, coming especially out of the holidays, you're gonna see candles. So we will start doing an education on what we're seeing and trying to educate to make this not happen. But whether it's rental or home-wise, I can't speak, Johanna, can you?
We actually whether it is by they spoken staying there and we know just as a rental, have a box in our inventory. Hopefully.
Thank you. I think it's important for us as we look at, how we protect the visitors who come and rent, who may not know their way around buildings, et cetera. And so thank you for tracking them. It'll be interesting to see the data when it becomes available. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you. We look forward to your budget. You know you have my support.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support.
All right. So under unfinished business, we have a consideration of a resolution to support the solid waste and recycling analysis for Hilton Head Island, and Brian McAwee is going to present that for us this morning.
Always enjoy following Chris. It's fun. So before you is a consideration of a resolution to support the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the assessment of solid waste and recycling on Hilton Head Island. Just as a reminder, this is an initiative within the 2023-2025 Strategic Action Plan. In early January, we had our consultant, Abby Goldsmith, come in and present her initial findings of the SWOT analysis, and the committee requested an explanation of a few current practices that we're doing, and also an evaluation of 5 near-term action items that we could pursue once this is approved by council. So with that said, I've asked Abby to come in and give kind of a briefer, more brief presentation focusing just on the actual strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then to get into those detailed items, and then I'll get up and talk about the final 5 near-term actions. So
Thank you. And you're looking for us to provide a resolution to town council for
Yes, ma'am.
approval?
Yep.
Thank you.
Abby Goldsmith.
Welcome.
As Brian said, I'm going to go over the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'm in the report that you, I believe, received since. And then review the. Sorry?
I can't hear you.
About the one to your left, yes.
And then review the feedback that you've provided at the last meeting and the responses to the feedback and questions specifically. So to review the strengths, the first strength we had identified, it was the demonstrated support from elected officials, from you, the council, and the public on waste reduction, recycling, and solid waste management, both in the goal in our plan, in your comprehensive plan, and the town council's resolution to work with the county to develop the new long-term agreement to secure landfill and recycling needs long-term for the county and for the town. And you have existing provisions that I think are pretty strong that provide a foundation for residential recycling. Other strengths are your existing resources with regard to the convenience centers, but also your public outreach and education materials, not necessarily that you've created, but that are available to the town, from the county and from the state. Some of the weaknesses is that you really have limited control over recycling and solid waste. It's the county that contracts for disposal and arranges for processing, at least under current arrangements. There's no consistent curbside collection of solid waste from residents here in the town. It's the only municipality in the town that doesn't have that, though you've tried it in the past. And haulers are not always in compliance with your current ordinance requirements. The information they're required, which is in the ordinance that they need to require, and I think is pretty powerful if you had that data, is not always reported consistently. They're required to provide recycling to all their residential customers. It's not 100% clear that they do, or that they explain to their customers, your residents, when they participate incorrectly by, for example, putting contaminants in recycling carts. Some of the other weaknesses are your past solid waste and recycling collection at town facilities, and especially on your own beaches, was handled by a beach patrol contract, so not a professional firm experienced with recycling and solid waste management. The town's moving away from that. There are some things in the ordinance that we may want to consider modifying to make it more consistent with what's actually happening. The Hilton Head convenience centers are a huge strength and resource to the town, but also the one in Hilton Head is very limited as far as its footprint and what you could do to expand there and what the county could do to expand there, and is overwhelmed with visitors. Current arrangements for disposal and processing, who pays for what, disincentivizes recycling from residents because, as I explained last time, the county actually pays for disposal of the waste collected from residents in the town and throughout the county, but not for the dropping off of recycling at processing facilities. And that sometimes could be as much as $100 a ton. So even if you collect materials as recyclables and you have the option of taking it somewhere for free and taking it somewhere for $100 a ton, there's that financial disincentive for them to take it to the recycling facility, even though that's what your ordinance requires them to do. And lastly, you're really limited currently in the resources dedicated to recycling and solid waste management. It's managed under your committee and Brian's division, but there's no staff dedicated specifically to overseeing solid waste and recycling. Some of the opportunities available to the town is that you do have a disposal facility. That disposal is free. That's sort of a double-edged sword when it comes to recycling, but if residents are disposing of waste, they pay for it in their property tax to the county, so the town's not paying. It's a unique arrangement if you look nationwide, but it's a strength and an opportunity for you as the town. The county's been considering developing a processing facility for recyclables south of Broad, which would make a more accessible and easy and less expensive facility to get to for your haulers. You have in place framework if you move towards townwide collection again, both from your own past history with contracting, but also from the other towns, and the county has even issued an RFP for curbside collection in the unincorporated areas. With your commercial sector so active here, especially hospitality, retail, that's a great waste stream to target for recycling. So that's another opportunity to achieve recycling and waste reduction goals, is to target the commercial sector. And the opportunity, it was a weakness, but it's also an opportunity the town's currently pursuing to enhance solid waste and recyclable collection on your beaches and at your beach parks. And to use that as an opportunity for educating visitors and residents that are at the parks and at the beaches. Some of the threats, demographic and geographic threats we talked about last time is, I know from driving over this morning, it takes a lot of time sometimes, traffic, to get over the bridges to get here. And that costs money if you're hauling, right? Solid waste or recyclables off island, or bringing in containers coming to the island to do hauling, and time is money. The high turnover of residents and The large visitor population is wonderful in many ways, but it also means you have to educate and re-educate and re-educate to get people to handle their waste and to recycle the way we do it here in town of Hilton Head. And lastly, as identified in your comprehensive plan and our plan, the impact of climate change on infrastructure and access, and especially on generation of debris and waste management, poses a consistent threat to waste management and recycling here on the island. Another threat is the limited facilities. It's wonderful that we have Hickory Hill and that the county's paying for disposal, but it's the only option. And the county's been looking for many years at ways to diversify those options so you're not beholden to one private facility. Convenience centers, though an opportunity, are also, as I said in the weaknesses, are limited as what you could expand there. That's what your residents are used to using for recycling and often for garbage disposal. And lastly, given the maps and the siting and your property values, they're really limited locations to add solid waste handling or expand solid waste handling or recycling facilities on island or even southern Beaufort County as a whole. Meaning, if you need to haul further, it's going to cost more. Threats from recycling generally, and we talked a little bit about that last time, so I wanted to expand. Markets for recyclables fluctuate. Whether you can cost effectively recycle plastic today is not going to necessarily be the same answer as it will be in 5 years. So you have to, as local governments aren't used to that kind of fluctuation in the marketplace when you're getting rid of material or selling material. Contamination is always a problem, and that goes hand in hand with the markets fluctuating. A lot more contamination is acceptable to a processing facility when markets are strong for materials. That changes when markets are weak for materials. They only want the cleanest and the best. Recycling often costs, even when you're not in Hilton Head, where disposal's free, paid for by the county for residents, and recycling's not. Sometimes recycling, especially single stream, when all the recyclables are put in one cart, usually that costs more than just disposing of it all together. You have to have a separate truck go down to everybody's house and pick up the recyclable separate. So that's kind of an education effort that needs to be made as well. There's still a big question mark when it comes to recycling, processing the recyclables that are collected here, and what it will take to get a processing facility that's more convenient to the town of Hilton Head. And lastly, the information that gets out about recycling and whether materials are getting recycled, if they're collected that way, and what can be recyclable. That's a problem everywhere, that people have different information, people don't have the right information, people spread the wrong information. And so there's always a giant question mark over, are we really recycling, and what is it that we're recycling? So when I was before you in January, the kind of big areas where you had questions that we promised to come back with were, can we talk about multifamily, given how is that handled? You talked about commercial, you talked about residential. Given how many multifamily properties we have in the town, can you talk about how that's managed and what recommendations? I think we asked for an example of how solid waste and recyclables are managed in some of the POAs, because they do have different programs that involve recycling and solid waste. Clarify what is recyclable exactly. I talked about the big question mark that nobody knows exactly what is okay to recycle and what's not. I think Councilman Brown asked for is grant funding an opportunity? Can we talk a little bit about the money that may be available for us? And the last question was, could we talk about near-term actions? What do you recommend? I think if you've seen the report, and in my last presentation, I gave you in each category a list of potential options to implement in the short term and in the long term. I've added, if you've seen the report, a table that summarizes those and kind of talks about the relative difficulty in implementing each of those, so you could kind of get it in context. And then working with the town, we've said, okay, what can we do right away? So we'll be presenting that. So, multifamily collection question, generally, that's pretty clearly defined for solid waste and recycling in your current ordinance in section 9610. If your garbage is collected by a dumpster, so typically if there's more than usually 4 or 5 units in a multifamily building, that's classified in your ordinance as a commercial facility. So when we talk about how do we increase recycling or improve solid waste collection at multifamily buildings, for the most part, we will be looking at how do we do it for all commercial entities. That's how their garbage gets recycled. So right now, in those buildings, haulers are not required to offer recycling to commercial facilities. They are to residents here in the town of Hilton Head, according to your ordinance. So that means that if the building has dumpster collection of garbage from a private hauler, and has so many units that they need that and can't use carts, then right now, they're not required to have recycling as well. Now, if the multifamily units have fewer units and are using carts for their garbage set out, that's served by a residential hauler. So that would be a recycling requirement on those haulers. So that's the answer to the question according to your ordinance and how waste is managed. I took a look at Sea Pines as an example of how the POAs approach recycling and solid waste management. Each of what they call regimes arranges collection for their villa or their condo complex. Each property owner contracts for their own service. And then they have now once a week drop-off center provide for recyclables. A lot of recyclables provided by a third-party vendor at their retail area. And the CSA requires, has strict rules about where the carts can be kept. They can't be put out at the curb. They're kept in what's called service yards, and that's a picture of my friend's service yard in Sea Pines. And then the CSA, more with the non-residential waste, they work with the vendors, the retailers, the restaurants to harvest recyclables, is what they call them, from commercial facilities, and that includes cardboard, glass, plastic and aluminum. They do food residuals and coffee and oyster shells from the restaurants there. And then they have a weekly collection and drop-off spot for vegetative debris, and they mulch it on site, and residents can pick that up for their own landscaping purposes. So you asked what was, would you like?
I think we have a quick question.
Yes.
Not necessarily a question, and I appreciate you breaking it down in this fashion. It's just a statement as we move along. It seems as if there's a chance that because precedent's being set in other municipalities to go towards some type of public pickup, just caution us a bit, because if the PUDs already have a service that they are paying for, and we are looking to add a service which will have to be paid somehow, I'm assuming through some type of tax, that we're not double taxing along the way. I'm not quite sure what that looks like. I'm just bringing it to our attention as we're moving along here. That's it.
It's an important point, and I think you're a bit unique that way, that you have so many collection agreements, not with individuals and their haulers, but their homeowner associations and the haulers. And I do think there's ways around that to avoid, as you say, double taxing or just changing a service they're happy with.
Good point, Alex.
So the question was, what is recyclable? And as I said, pretty much every member of the public has that question, and it's a very tricky question. And the answer is in italics at the bottom, which is basically what is recyclable is what the processor that you've made arrangements with, or in your case, the county has made arrangements with, what they'll take at their front door. And that's different from facility to facility, but also over time. Well, those changes don't help residents who are trying to understand what they can do. You can't tell a resident one week, yes, we take glass, and the next week we don't. But what I wanted to show you here was in the left column of the table is what your ordinance says must be recycled by your haulers. Anybody with a business license has to pick those up from their residential customers. Whereas what's on the right is what's accepted aligned with your categories at the county convenience centers. Many more things are taken at the convenience centers as listed on the bottom, but those aren't things you'd want to collect at curbside. There's nothing wrong with taking more materials at a convenience center. So you'll see one of the things in the report that may be wise to do, it, not one of the most urgent things, but your ordinance may not want to necessarily define what recyclables have to be collected because that's so hard to change. So I've recommended other mechanisms that you indeed should tell your haulers, this is what you have to collect from residents, but probably through some mechanism that's a little more flexible than your ordinance. And you can see why people are confused. If you look, for example, at plastic, the definition, you know, you say in your ordinance that all plastic bottles and jugs, closed mouth, so numbers 1 through 7, right? You get that little number on the bottom of recyclable plastic or all plastic is acceptable, but then that same resident goes to the convenience center and they can only do 1s and 2s, high-density polyethylene and PET, so your water bottles, the water jugs or milk jugs and soda bottles. So the point being that even here where you have stuff in your ordinance and then the convenience center takes slightly different things, you can see why people are confused.
May I ask you a question about that, just for clarification? So we require through our ordinance that the items on y'all's right, left, are collected by our haulers, but doesn't necessarily require that they get recycled.
That's a great question.
Because of all of the points that you've made, depending on the value to them in terms of recycling, the cost to them of dropping it off at the recycling center, et cetera, as well as the question that I keep being confused on is what's considered a contamination, which disqualifies it altogether from being recycled. So those are the things that I can't get my head right around.
Right. Okay. So the answer to the question about do we require those haulers to recycle what they collect as recyclables? What your ordinance says is that they must, on a weekly basis, collect at least those materials on the left and deliver them to the recycling facility defined by approved by a recycling facility approved by the town. So my interpretation, I'm not a lawyer, would be, yes, they're required to deliver them to a recycling facility, and they're not allowed to say, okay, well, we collected them, but we took it to the landfill. That would be against your ordinance. But I'm not sure there's been a clear process for which facilities are approved by the town for them to deliver them.
So that's something that needs to be strengthened within our ordinance to move forward with anything that we do with solid waste recycling program. In addition to, because that's the anecdotal information you get from everybody. They throw it all in the back and it ends up in the landfill. Right. So we have to clean that up. So perception is the same thing as reality. And that is that they're required to take it to the recycling center.
Right.
Through our ordinance. And then to add, I'm asking for your suggestion, and then in strengthening that ordinance, also strengthen the fine if it's discovered that that doesn't happen. So there's some repercussion from the town that says, come on, get it all there. That's what we expect you to do. That's what our residents expect you to do. It's our visitors want us all to do. And that's what we're paying you for. That makes sense?
That's one way to get at it, yes. I mean, yes. I mean, what I've recommended, what's detailed in the report is one thing I would do was, like I say, take the list out because it's not a hauler's fault that they collect these things and all the places that accept recyclables won't take that load because it has, for example, plastics 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and those aren't recyclable, at any local processor. So that and you ask what's a contaminant, that's an example. A contaminant is anything that's not recyclable by the processor at which you're taking your materials, right?
And that varies from processor to processor?
Yes, so one option is for the town to contract with a processor and just say, okay, here's where they go, here are the materials, here's where you take everything that you are required, and here's the list. I would take it out of the ordinance and put it in, as suggested in the report, possibly when you issue their annual business license to the haulers, which is your current process for overseeing them. You give them the list. And I wouldn't change it, you don't want to change it every year, but you change it if a processor says, guess what? I can now take milk cartons, and which, aseptic containers they're called.
Okay.
So I do think there are a lot of ways to get at it. Of course, the way most local governments get at it, a town or a city might, is they contract for collection. If you entered into a contract for curbside collection, all this would be irrelevant, because your contract would say, here's what you have to collect and here's where you have to take it, just like you do with the garbage. So that's another way to get at it.
Thank you for helping me.
Madam Chair. While we're talking about this, if I could ask a couple of questions as well. First of all, I appreciate the suggestion to take out a list because it's in flux all the time. But my issue is that if we don't do it by some sort of franchise with waste haulers on a town basis, then the waste haulers are going to say, well, I don't have to collect anything. And so how do you manage that? And then I don't think we can hand out a list each week and go like, okay, or we put it on the website, say, here's what's recyclable this week. And then the other thing is, as the chair has brought up, if it's contaminated, and maybe the contamination is, I put in plastic number 3, and that's not recyclable this week. So that causes that mixed load, if you will, to be contaminated, and they won't do anything. Do some of those recycling facilities, if it's a mixed or mingled load, I can't remember what the term is, do they have means of separating those out if one item within the bag is contaminated?
So usually what a contract with a processing facility, and there would never be changes every week.
Okay.
I'm talking about maybe every 5 or 10 years.
Or every 5 or 10?
Right. Like if you entered into a contract with a processing facility, that would say, here are the things you'll take for the term life of this contract.
Okay.
It's just if you wanted to do another RFP, so it should not change regularly.
Okay, but I thought I heard you say that what is recyclable depends on the market, and the market changes. So surely that changes more often than every 5 years. Now, I said every week because I don't know how often it changes, but it seems like it's somewhere between 1 week and 5 years, closer to the 1 week side.
The markets change as far as pricing. Mostly, for example, plastics, the price for recyclable plastics sold changes with the price of oil, because the alternative to using an old bottle to make a new bottle is to use oil to make a new bottle. So if you've got a commitment from a processor, I'll take plastics 1 and 2. I will take plastics 1 and 2 for the life of our contract, say 5-year contract. They lose if the price goes down, they win if the price goes up, but they take the materials. So that's more, when I say markets fluctuate, I don't necessarily, most things are either technologically recyclable or not. It's just the market pricing changes. So you need somebody to commit.
So then that begs the question, why not have a list? And yes, you have to do it. You may not make money off that, but you still have to do it because we care about our environment and we want you to recycle.
Right.
So why wouldn't we keep a list in the ordinance?
I'm just suggesting something a little more flexible than an ordinance, and that's the annual licensing process. So just as a reminder, this is where you take recyclables. This is your reporting requirement. These are the things you have to collect from all your customers that you're serving, just as a term of your license that you issue every single year. That's the way, I don't see a list of materials in ordinances that often that you have to collect. I think it's fine to say, here, you have to collect the materials in accordance with your business license terms. And you might not change that list every year. You probably won't. But at least it gives you more control to make adjustments.
So everybody's, notwithstanding the day on which they renew their business license, then each year each business would have the same list.
Oh, no
And
question.
then the town has to figure out what to put on the list.
Exactly.
And I'm totally guessing at this, but I'm guessing that the reason there was an extensive list in the current ordinance is because at that time, the town was proactive about recycle everything. That's what I'm guessing. And
Right.
maybe that's why we were the exception rather than the rule, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. But, so let me get this straight, because now I'm confused about your suggestions. So in order for folks who live and visit here and work here, let's take the definition of the list of what's recyclable out of the ordinance. Okay, let's assume that's what we decide to do. And once we decide to do that, then we do through licensing every year to the haulers. Here's your list, your current list. And then the other option, or it's an and, is to the town contracts with a recycling facility and say, you must take these, and that's not renewed every year, probably. And so those are the two options. So not through the list in the ordinance, but through licensing and/or contracting with a facility. Are those your recommendations?
It's hard. I mean, I hate to say it depends, but it depends. Because ideally, the intention and the plan, the county's plan, is for them to have a recyclable processing facility in the south part of the county. So in my mind, if we're successful in collaborating with them to develop that facility and it's accessible to you, that's the most convenient facility for your haulers. And that's the list, whatever they can take there is your list of materials.
But that's really a third option. Take it out of the ordinance and licensing permits, town contracts directly, or if there's a county facility, the county takes care of that.
Right, and you wouldn't need to contract. Another option that's in the report is if you decide you're going to enter into contract with a collect garbage and recyclable collection yourself, at least outside of the POAs, then you put all that, you don't have to contract with the recycling facility at all because that's in the contract. You're contracting with someone to collect recyclables and take them to a processing facility. It could be of their choice if they, in their proposal, say, these are the things we'll be taking. Or in your RFP, these are the things you have to take, and you have to prove you're recycling them.
So now we have four options, and on that fourth option, one of the questions I asked at the previous meeting is, the town had history of doing that.
Right.
And the town abandoned that, and why, and how can we learn from that if we don't know the answer to that? And I don't see the answer in the report. Maybe Mr. McElwee is going to give it to us later. But I think we need to know that because I don't know what to do. I don't want to make the same mistakes.
I understand. Yeah. And in my reading of what happened, at least when I scanned the news articles and reports from the time, the issue was primarily a proposed increase from your contractor, annual increase. And citizens and possibly the council saying, well, and waste haulers coming and saying, well, if you just cancel your contract and go back to doing it independently, we can do it cheaper.
Okay.
So it seemed primarily to me to be a cost issue.
And so you said from newspaper articles, did you look at town council minutes?
I don't remember now.
Abby, if I could jump in here real quick.
Thank you.
I know I've spoken with the former town manager about this, who was here when that was taking place. His comments for one of the reasons why they ended up abandoning it was the difficulties in terms of collections. So many facilities want to have that waste picked up at a very specific time, specifically Saturday and Sunday turnover. as one group comes in and another group comes out. The issue becomes that Hickory Hill, which is the only place that's within a reasonable distance to dispose of it, closes at noon on Saturdays. And so if you don't have the waste delivered there before they close, you as the hauler are required to store those materials on site until Monday, when you can then drop them off. And that was, my understanding, part of the issue in that the haulers weren't picking it up at the times that the bill payees were requesting it, and then the difficulty of disposing it during that time because of the limited availability of Hickory Hill over the weekend.
That's been going on for a number of years. Who owns Hickory Hill facility?
Waste Management.
The company
And
does.
just to give you a little bit more context, state law currently prohibits the inclusion of any new Class 1 solid waste facility within 75-mile radius of any existing Class 1 facility. And what that means is Hickory Hill is and will be the only place that we
monopoly.
have access to unless and until we create a facility in which we can put it into some kind of solid waste transfer vehicle where you can get the weight to then lower your transportation cost and then have the availability of going to other locations where you can compete from a market standpoint.
Yeah, a number of other jurisdictions that I know of use that transfer facility for that very reason, but.
And the county has pursued that on several occasions unsuccessfully. And historically, what it comes down to is this is a great idea. We need to do it. We may even have a site for it, but as soon as the site becomes public, anybody who lives close to it absolutely objects to it, and then it ends up, falling aside.
So does the county have a franchise agreement with Waste Management to use that facility?
They're on they used to have a 20-year contract. And with Hickory Hill running out of cell space, their future business plans were up in the air about whether they themselves were going to build a transfer station or whether they were going to add an additional cell. And I don't know the outcome of that discussion. I think that's still probably the status right now is they haven't made up their mind, which is why they're not going to give the county anything more than a year-to-year contract.
Oh, sorry, a lot of detail here, but year-to-year contract, why can't the county change the terms of the date that's open year-to-year?
So when you're negotiating against somebody who you have no leverage with, you have no negotiability. That's the bottom line. Waste Management essentially gets to dictate a lot of the terms, unless and until the county wants to build a transfer center, at which point it opens up their options exponentially.
It's all facility monopoly, I understand that. So it's a state law of the 75 miles.
It is.
Perhaps we should add our delegation to make an amendment to that state law.
Well, just so you know, I think when we put it on a map a number of years ago, the southern tip of Sea Pines would be just outside of the 75-mile per radius. Other than that, we are completely prohibited from any other Class 1 landfill.
Yeah, I'm not going to suggest any barges in the ocean, so go ahead. All right, thank you.
I'm not going to volunteer the southern tip of Sea Pines.
So can I just ask a practical matter? So practically, given the fact that Hilton Head is a tourist, a resort community, and so a lot of the issues that Mr. Gruber correctly pointed out with regard to the difficulties from the last go-around with this sort of thing still exist, even more so. And so those time constraints of picking up, delivering within PUDs, generally they don't want anything to happen prior to 7 o'clock, I'm thinking is the right number. Correct me if I'm wrong at some point. And so all of that is problematic. The idea that our visitors or anyone is able to identify those recyclables that are acceptable based on a number on the bottom of a jug. I don't know how many people pay attention to those things. I'm just saying that my gut feeling says that maybe most people don't, even though they want to recycle. What they're doing is actually contaminating the recyclable opportunities. This resolution that we have in front of us is simply to accept the report, and thank you for all of the hard work and the information. It's very important. It's not necessarily to move forward with implementation. It's to be able to accept it and move it forward in further discussions. Am I correct on that? Yes, okay. And I just have big question marks and concerns that we're spending a lot of time and effort and concern and absolute sincerity to try to protect our environment, and we may just be up against a brick wall in many cases. So that's how this is kind of unfolding, but for me. And we didn't mean to stop you in the middle of your discussion. So if you would, thank you.
To give you a little hope, I mean, it is.
Did I sound pessimistic
Yes.
to you?
You know, I do think recycling, I don't think it's not successful here. I definitely don't. And I think it is equally and possibly more successful in communities with just as complicated demographics, as you have. So
It's a good thing to continue working and striving towards. Okay.
they're choices. Yeah, they're, yeah. The question about funding, so we've identified an additional opportunity in the report on grant funding. Probably the best potential for grant funding comes state of South Carolina. Not huge grants, but they're annual and they're specifically to support waste reduction and recycling programs. So they can buy carts, they can increase, develop educational materials. They have a whole multifamily and commercial recycling grant program. So I think that's probably a great and easy access source of funding. Beaufort County does access that, but towns are eligible too for your needs. And then they're not-for-profits like the Recycling Partnership, which also funds curbside recycling carts, multifamily programs, drop-off programs specifically. So there's definitely grant funding out there, not millions and millions of dollars, but tens of thousands of dollars to support infrastructure development and operation of programs. So that's been added indeed as an opportunity in the report. So then the next question, and maybe this will kind of help focus, what I presented in the report and in my work was, in addition to the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, was a list of options and how hard they are to implement them. And some are mutually exclusive and some are not. So I think the next step is to say, okay, what can we do right away? Which of these options should we pick? And what do we want to do right away? And what's kind of long-term? And so I've been collaborating with the town staff to sort of understand better what's feasible in the near term. And so Brian's gonna present to you the potential near-term actions, things you can start with on the list in that table and in the report.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Abby teed that up perfectly. So we were asked to look at 5 potential near-term actions that we could implement based upon when this gets approved by council. The first item there is to coordinate with Beaufort County and share with them this report and work on their short, mid, and long-term plans for solid waste and recycling. I probably talked with Neil Desai, the Public Works Director, 2 or 3 times a month about this topic. We recently were discussing possibilities of could we expand the Hilton Head Convenience Center based on their desire to increase recycling. So that's an ongoing, so we're already doing that one, but we can continue that. The other one is to evaluate an approach and costs associated if the town was going to provide this curbside collection. Abby kind of mentioned it. Sea Pines, they're supposed to store the carts in the storage area, the service yard. This says curbside, but talking with Waste Management and some other vendors, it would most likely be like backdoor service, which is going to increase the cost. They don't want the carts out on the side of the road like you would have in a city. So that's a possible near-term action, is to evaluate the costs associated with that. The next 2 kind of go hand in hand, but establish best-in-class recycling programs at our beach park facilities and at our other town facilities. We currently have a waste and recycling RFP that is out to bid right now, and I think they were due at 11 today, and we'll open that tomorrow. And then we have TJ Jett with us now. He's our Chief Environmental Officer. He'll be introduced to council tomorrow afternoon. I think the last meeting he was virtual on that. but TJ is helping to implement that new contract. And then the last bullet is Abby already mentioned it, but to continue to strengthen our enforcement with our current licensed haulers. It is kind of like a parent reminding a kid sometimes to, brush their teeth, do their homework. I have to send them an email in August, say, hey, I need your report from June, and then in November, hey, I need your report for February. And it's just, they don't do it proactively. So maybe there's something within our licensing that when they come in, they have to have that report and they have to do it and strengthen those penalties if we can. So those were the 5 kind of near-term action items. Abby's report mentions many other options that we can implement, but these were the top 5 that we thought we could do right away once this was approved. So that is pretty much it. Happy to answer any other questions, or Abby can join me, or.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Just a couple of comments. Goldsmith's presentation kind of left me with the feeling that the destination we wanted to get to, you can't get there from here. I hope that we can get a little more optimism into this effort. When I think about it personally, a little influenced by the medical concept. First, do no harm. We've got a couple of things going on that are actually working against recycling. Having the haulers have to pay when they've got recycles to dump, but they don't have to pay for the regular garbage. A disincentive like that seems to me is one of the things we have to focus on to get rid of disincentives. Another similar one is in the collection process, where the man working to pick things up put the recyclables and the garbage together in the truck. Those are 2, from my perspective, big disincentives that we ought to try to deal with early on. Yeah, and then finally, and you made a reference to curbside collection. Yes, in Sea Pines, they don't want the cans on the street. Many have recycling bins, storage areas that are in the front of the house. Otherwise, people are asked to put their cans in the front of the house, but not on the street. I'm sure Sea Pines and perhaps others would like to continue that effort. Thank you.
Alex.
No questions. It is very complicated. It's a big undertaking. What you have suggested in the 5 points, I think, are reasonable. I do anticipate, however, that as we start to unpeel each one of those, we're going to find even more complications along the way. So ready and willing to conquer those. I would also just sort of add for us to think about down the line, if we are going to hold folks more accountable when it comes to recycling, as I can appreciate us having Mr. Jett on staff now, I'm not sure he's going to be able to chase down as well, right? So it's just, it's another case where if we're going to be strong in this area, for example, Chief has a whole department that goes out and makes sure that folks are in compliance before they can get renewal of their business license, right? Well, I sort of see the same in this fashion if we're going down this road. So I'm in favor of moving this forward so we can figure it out.
Alex. Patsy?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. To Mr. Alfred's comment about the fee that's paid, is that a fee set by the county, or is that a fee set by Waste Management? I mean, how can we get rid of that disincentive if we have no control over it?
Right, basically, it's the county enters into a disposal contract on behalf of residents and pay for disposal. And that's what they do. They don't do it for recycling. The fee is set by whoever's operating the recycling facility, charges a fee at the scale, just like the disposal facility charges a fee at the scale. It's just that the county's arrangement is that they have a contract for disposal. They don't have a contract for recycling, to pay for recycling.
So either that's a county issue, or I think one of the suggestions was for the town to contract directly with a recycling facility. Is that correct?
It's an option, right?
So we already know Hickory Hill is the place for waste disposal. Where are the facilities for recycling that we could, that the town could contract with and then deal with the fee?
Right, right. So there was we did put out an RFP from the county for processing capacity and the response. So where they go now is to a recycling facility at the Hickory Hill landfill.
Managed by Waste Management.
Correct. But there's also a new recycling facility called in town or in the county called I2 Recycling that I know town staff has been talking to.
Yep, I'm familiar, somewhat familiar with it. I'm not very familiar at all, but, so that's one possibility for the town to contract with that facility and require our licensed haulers to use that facility, and then we can control the fee?
I would think yes.
And is there another facility, I mean, short distances within the county, is there an adjoining county that has a recycling facility with whom the town could contract?
Adjoining, I don't know. I mean, what a lot of places do is what they do with waste, which is they take recyclables at a transfer point, bail them and send them to, for example, Pratt is a big recycling facility in Savannah, Pratt Recycling.
I don't know, I'll look to the town attorney to find out, can we contract with a recycling facility in another state? And if you don't know, you need to get back to us, that's fine.
Well, no, the answer to your question is yes. I mean, I think the larger question, though, is the cost of getting the materials to, for us anyway, a remote location, and what that does to the cost of the services here on Hilton Head Island through the, several haulers that operate.
Sure, yeah, it always comes back to cost, but just looking for options of what we could do, and then we could look at the cost. Okay. And then a related question, are there waste haulers that only haul recyclables compared to everything?
For collecting. You offering collecting from residents? I mean, there are definitely processors that, like I do, that only recycle and don't have a landfill.
Right.
So the question is, you're asking me, are there haulers that don't haul garbage but only recycling?
Correct, I'm familiar with haulers in other jurisdictions that do that.
That do, but I don't know of any that hold a business license anyway for the town of Hilton Head.
All right. So let's see, that took care of fees and facilities and separate haulers. I think it would be good, certainly before it goes before town council, I think it'd be good for us to have a report from the town staff about what happened before and why it was changed. That's what I asked for before, and I think I'm still asking for that.
Yeah, I appreciate Josh chiming in on that, talking with former town manager Steve Riley. I've asked my counterparts, people I used to work with, I tried to remember myself when I was here. I think it came down also to people wanted to choose their own. I remember that being a big thing, but no, I don't think any staff members remains from that past contract. I tried to find if there was a council resolution, there wasn't. I think it was canceled by the town manager. He has the right to cancel the contract, so I couldn't find anything within.
No official town record of what happened. Okay. Thank you.
Anecdotally, as having been here at that time, a lot of what you heard, or everything you heard from Mr. Gruber is correct. And from sitting on a board at a small villa complex, it was very costly for us to make the changes. And across the island, it was the increase in cost, but also the lack of being able to choose the carrier and the timing, and it was just difficult across the board. So those are general statements, I understand, but if it helps at all. All right, do we have oh, we good? Yeah, okay. Do we have a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Okay, in a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And again, this resolution is moving forward the study to be able to continue the work to see where it takes us. It does not take us any place in particular at this moment, but allows for us to continue the discussion and see if some of these questions can be answered in a way that maybe it'll work in the future and I can be more optimistic rather than seeing all the hurdles in front of us. And so all in favor? I vote no. 3 to 1.
3 to 1, thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chief, and all of your staff for being here this morning and everything.
Yes.
So, new business. We have a consideration of an ordinance amending Title IX, Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code of Hilton Head Island, titled Regulations and Requirements Relating to Smoking of Tobacco Products by adding a definition for electronic smoking.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. As indicated in the materials that are before you today, this item is relatively straightforward. And it's essentially us catching up with the times. So we have existing smoking regulations that have been on our books for quite some time now. But we've realized through the help of the Low Country Alliance through Healthy Youth that our definitions don't necessarily match with the current capabilities that exist with regards to tobacco delivery. And so what we've done is we've prepared an amendment to town code which would include a definition of electronic smoking devices. And that definition is structured as such that it should encompass everything that is out there today on the market in terms of vaping and vaping related activities. And so what we are proposing to do is include that definition within our ordinance and then also make a reference to it so that the prohibitions that are currently in place with regards to smoking traditional tobacco related products would also apply to electronic smoking devices as well. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Alex, would you like to start us off?
No question, I'm ready to support this.
Okay. Patsy?
No questions, I'm ready to support, and thank you for pointing out that it was the youth in the community who brought this to us last year, as I recall, and I'm glad we're proceeding. Thank you.
Okay. No questions. And yes, thank you to that wonderful group of high schoolers who are taking their first step in civic-minded, health-related concerns. And I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Oh, we have a motion? Oh, yes, of course. I do apologize. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item of our agenda? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Any further questions from the committee? And do we have a motion?
I move to recommend to the full council the adoption of this draft ordinance.
And all in favor? And if there is no other business before us at this time, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.